Are we live, Brady?
Yep, we are live.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in again for another week with our mental health check-ins with our young people. As you know, last week we were discussing how we can have more engagement between our students and our educators. And so like the counselor always does, she gave us what we wanted, and now we're here with young people and educators so we can basically begin the conversation. Again, I'm Naesoj Ware, Counselor Julie Mejia's youth liaison, and as always I just want to start off with introductions, and I'll go to my co-host, Dr. Gayl.
Hello, welcome back, and we are so happy to have you guys join us again this week. Actually, I say that Naesoj is the primary host, and I'm just here as backup and support. So we're happy to have you here. Again, I am a clinician in the Boston area where I have a group practice that provide mental health counseling to children, youth, and families. So welcome back to our weekly host about young people and mental health. Back to you, Naesoj.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gayl. So we can start with our other youth liaison who's joining us this summer, Alondra.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alondra. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. My name is Alondra. I'm 17. Besides Julia's new youth liaison, I'm also Boston's Youth Poet Laureate.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Sylvia.
Hi, I'm Nicole Silva. I teach 10th grade English at Boston International High School.
Thank you, Miss Mcglone. Please tell me if I'm saying it wrong.
That's fine, Miss Mcglone. I'm Suzie Mcglone, and I teach 6th grade humanities at Orchard Garden School in Roxbury.
Thank you. And Catherine?
Hi, I'm Catherine De Jesus, and I'm a sophomore at Boston International High School, and I'm student body president.
Thank you so much. And lastly, the man of the hour, the person who will basically be running the show this week, Pascal.
Hi, my name is Pascal. I go to Cash in Just Corner.
And I don't want to forget about you, Counselor. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Oh, sure. I'm using my phone today, so I can't see everybody's face. But good evening, everyone. I am Julia Mejia, at-large city councilor. Really looking forward to learning and listening on what we can do to improve remote learning, meaningful relationships between educators and students, and really happy that Pascal brought the conversation to the forefront and that we were able to secure Nicole and Suzie to join us this evening, both two educators who I know are deeply committed to working with young people and families. And so I thought who better to represent this conversation than two educators who are already doing incredible work with our community. So thank you both. Thank you, Pascal, for bringing the conversation to the forefront, and Naesoj and Alondra for your leadership in holding it down. And Dr. Gayl, as always, we love you and appreciate you. And we're just here to listen and learn. So I'll be giving it right back to you, Naesoj. Handle your business. You got this.
So much. And as always, I want to thank our person behind the scenes, Brady, because he's so important and he literally handles everything. So yeah, I guess the first question is just, how is mental health impacting you personally? And for our teachers, how are you dealing with mental health and remote learning with your students? And we can start with you, Mr. Sylvia. Are you able to? Could you hear? Mr. Sylvia, can you hear us? Yeah.
So the question is, how am I dealing with the mental health of my students?
Yeah, your mental health and then remote learning.
So I guess for me, a big part of my mental health is trying to do exercise and trying to find some balance so that there's time that I'm a single mom, so trying to give some time for my family as well as supporting my students. And I think for supporting my students' mental health is knowing that individual assignment is not more important than their physical or mental health. So if I'm calling home or checking in on them, I'm never starting or sometimes never even getting to the fact that they might be missing work. I care a lot more about them as people and know that there's so many other things going on that I'm not going to stress out a family because they missed one assignment when so many other things are out of our control right now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gayl.
Hi. So the way I've been dealing, I think it's always, important for everyone to, handle and be working on their mental health all the time. We actually talk about that in my class, even way before the pandemic, of course. A lot of people probably talk about that. So for me personally, it's been really helpful for me to continue to do my Qigong. I do Qigong now remotely. That's like Tai Chi. And I work with the group in Boston. And then, and all of the other stuff, just making sure I'm eating correctly and things like that, seeing my family on Zoom. I live by myself. I don't have any kids. So I have to say it's not that stressful as far as that goes. With my students, like I said, we've talked about it a lot before, just because we always need to check on ourselves based on just, the world that we live in. And so since the pandemic, or my kids call it quarantine, we've just been doing a lot more check-ins at the beginning of class, and really I'm trying to make it clear to them that what's important is making sure that, as it was even before remote learning, that I'm trying to enhance their dignity every day, and they're doing the same to each other. And that if they can show up to my class, they will get some validation for what they're going through, and we'll also get some learning in there.
Thank you so much. I want to go down to Catherine.
Sorry. The thing that I'm doing to help with my mental health, I will say that I've been writing poetry, although I've been a little bit stuck. I've been doing exercise, which is not very normal in my normal routine, but it has helped just keeping studies and drama and even the whole deal of the pandemic and just focusing on the moment. That has been so helpful right now. So that's kind of the two things I've been focusing mainly on related to mental health. So yeah.
Thank you so much, and Alondra.
I think for me, it's been a balance of different things. Part of it is writing poetry as well, like Catherine said. Prayer is another really big thing for me. Every time we have our youth group meetings, I try not to miss. It really helps to see them, even if it is through the screen. I think it's really important to keep up, with people on the outside. I pretty much have all my main family at home, so I don't really miss them. But people like my dad, stuff like that, just trying to stay in contact as much as I can.
Thank you. And lastly, Pascal, and then you could take it from here.
So I feel like, during this time, I just really been trying to take the time to just stay by myself and like really think a lot about my future and like what I really want to do when I get like older and out of high school and all that stuff. So yeah, that's really all I've been doing, just trying to stay by myself. But yeah, let's get into everything else. So like the first question I want to ask, like teachers and whoever wants to chime in, like how often do you like stay in contact with students, and how do you feel, like how do you come about the conclusion where you feel it's comfortable enough where it's like you're not too pushy or you're not on their back too much?
Yeah, it's like we like it to be very organic, so you could just chime in at any point now.
Okay, I'll chime in. So I teach middle schoolers, and they, if you give them a lot of autonomy, they can actually do a lot. And I really like to give them a lot of that freedom to make a lot of choices. And I have a Zoom class every day at 11, actually. And a lot of my students come to that class. and because it's a time, since I teach humanities, we've been doing some reading, but we always, like I said, we start with the check-in, and then we'll do some reading and discussion. And we've been doing a lot of civics since this started, though it might not look like it's directly in the social studies standards. It actually is, and it's actually an important part of what's going on. So I have my 11 o'clock to 12 o'clock class every day. And then I also have an 8 o'clock check-in that the kids like to come to. And that's just completely check-in and social. And I have been in touch with the families a lot, like I always was. And I don't, like you said, like, you know, just getting on the students about what they're doing. I don't like to get on the parents either. I like to keep the parents aware of what's going on, but I don't think that if a student missed an assignment, for example, I'm not going to call a parent about that right away, because their student usually, you know, I can deal with it with them better than just, you know, bothering a parent, because most parents in my school are very busy right now. They're either working still as essential workers, or they are busy trying to do this new homeschooling thing. So I do have weekly meetings every Wednesday at 5 o'clock with the families as well, and the kids come to that. So that's how I've been sort of keeping tabs on what's going on. And it's nice. We're trying to build community instead of having like you know, me tell you like what your child has done wrong or what they're missing in school. That's really, I don't think that's ever helpful, and it's super not helpful in this era.
Sorry, can you repeat the question, Pascal?
So the question was just basically, is there ever a time where you're reaching out to your students and you feel like you're being too pushy, or you're just on their back too much?
So for our school, each teacher has 8 students that they need to contact twice a week. I try not to make 2 phone calls, because I feel that becomes a little too much for them. And one of my weekly assignments is like a quick 5-question check-in, which mostly talks about how stressed are you, what kind of de-stressors are you working on, what's the thing you miss the most about pre-quarantine life, what do you want to see in the future, different questions like that. And then I'll respond to students then. I'm on WhatsApp. I have an Instagram that like 20 people follow. So, I text the students and their parents and call them at least once a week. And mostly I always just focus it on how are you doing. So when I do my 8 specific students that I'm supposed to do, I always just start with how are you doing? Like, yeah, I know the math teacher wants me to talk to you about the assignments, but that's not what's important. And for the most part, they're pretty responsive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pascal. Before you move on, I kind of want to go to Catherine. I'm interested, like as student body president, do you ever get complaints like from your peers about teachers reaching out?
Actually, yes. We recently just had a meeting with our principal about it. Before we didn't used to have like office hours, but now because we actually complained, teachers are required to have office hours to support students, but not kind of saying not mandatory, but optional. So we actually fought in that way just to have a more of a normal school atmosphere and just have teachers available for students most of the time.
So basically what I'm hearing is like your situation at your school, it wasn't too much attention, it was like lack of attention basically.
Not really, but yes. Not really in the sense that teachers were not like saying we don't care about you, but they weren't having the same school atmosphere that we will usually have. They weren't having all the attentions we will usually have, because we usually had 8 hours with teachers. Now we have 1 hour. So it was not the same, but we actually fought to get it a little bit normal. It's not that we were lacking of attention, but we were we were struggling in terms of how much time we spent with our teachers.
Makes sense. Pascal?
Catherine, do you feel like now that you reached out, do you feel like the teachers are getting better, or do you still have to like reach out to them for you to get help?
I think they're better now. They have a calendar where you could actually make an appointment if you have if you want face-to-face, well, screen-to-screen help. So they are a lot more available now. So yeah, fighting for that has actually made a difference.
All right, thank you for that. Well, I know for me personally, communication has always helped between teachers, like good relationship or bad relationship, because at the end of the day, like a teacher being a teacher, they would obviously have to understand, like, kind of not obviously, but they would have to understand where the student and the child is coming from. And like, I know like a lot of my teachers, I don't know if anyone else on here have kids, or like any other teachers have kids, but like my teachers always come across to me for like first as like a mother. So we've always had like that kind of relationship where it's like not a love and hate relationship, but it's like it's a mutual relationship, so we get along. So but yeah, thank you for that. And next question is do you ever feel as though like teachers hold on, sorry, I just forgot my question.
It's okay, Pascal.
Can you guys come back to me in like 2 seconds? Sorry.
Yeah, we got you. I kind of wanted to go off of what you said, because I thought it was interesting. The fact that you didn't want to say like parent relationship. I understood, because like maybe that's a little inappropriate, but you sometimes like your teachers come off as like your other mentor, like kind of like your other provider in a sense. And so I want to ask you, Mr. Sylvia, because I know you mentioned that you have kids. Do you ever feel that kind of relationship with your students? I mean, obviously it'll never be as strong as with your kids, but do you ever feel like you're coming off as a mom?
Oh, definitely. And I have some students who call me like their mom or whatever language, because all the students in our school are immigrant students. But that, like, I don't force that. There's some kids who are going to see me like that, and some kids who are not going to see me like that. And there's some kids who call like my daughter their sister, and check in on her, and their parents, like yours, Catherine, calls and checks on my kids, and I check on her. So I think, yeah, definitely that. And that relationship is really hard to keep up. And I think focusing it on who you are as a person and how you're doing is the way to do it, instead of the academics are important too, and we're going to do things that are meaningful. But if you didn't write that poem this week, I really just want to see if you're okay is much more important.
Yeah, and I want to ask you, Miss Mcglone, because I know like a lot of my teachers, I'm always like, when are you gonna have kids? And I'm like, I don't need to have kids. You guys are my kids. Do you ever get like that sense with your students?
All the time, yeah. And I'm like, no, I've got enough right here with me. So yeah, and I do want to emphasize that I like what Mr. Silva's saying and the others is about, really making sure the contact with the parents and between the students is first about checking up on how are you doing? How is your family? What do is there something you need? Instead of just saying this assignment wasn't done, this wasn't done, this wasn't done, because I think that really does not build an authentic relationship.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to come to the students now, Alondra and Catherine. Do you ever feel like having that strong bond with your teacher is beneficial?
I think that it's incredibly beneficial. I know that during this time, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming, and it really helps when you have teachers that check in just to check in, and they're not on your back in terms of, why haven't you put in this assignment, or why haven't you, you know what I mean? I definitely have had, like yesterday, I had a teacher contact me and be like, this assignment was not your best work, for, lack of a better word. What's going on? So instead of being like, it wasn't your best work, do it again, or, scrutinizing me in a negative way, it was more like, this is not usually what you do. Is there something going on, or is it laziness? Like, be honest, have that discussion, have that conversation. So it's definitely something that stabilizes me, so to speak, during this time. And I definitely really appreciate those relationships.
Thank you so much, Alondra. How about you, Catherine?
I 100% agree with Alondra. I think that having teacher support is 100% beneficial due to the fact that just saying that right now during this time, you're not only struggling with class, but you're also struggling with what's happening in real life, with what's happening within the pandemic. So when teachers usually fight constantly about your work, that doesn't only brings you down in that class, but it brings you down in general. So I think that having teacher support there 100%, just 100% is beneficial. Just for an example, in that one of my teachers, I was a little bit behind in their class, and just with one work, he was like, wow, that's amazing. And those little comments, they just make your day, and they just make your day a lot brighter. So I do think that having teacher support and love and attention is always beneficial for students and in general.
Yeah, I agree. Pascal, you ready to take over?
Yeah, I figured out my question. So, teachers, if you could answer this question. I know that as for students, there's some teachers that we get along with more than others, and I know for teachers, there should be some students that you guys get along with more than others. And I just want to ask you, do you guys ever feel as though like you're giving too much attention to one student and not the other? Is that like why they're not getting as much work in, or they're not they don't know what they're supposed to know? Is there any other ways, like other than what you know, like to get them together what they need to, so they can do what they need to do?
I think that in the pandemic and the quarantine, it's not even always about the relationship with the student. If a student kind of falls off, I don't take it personally, like I'm a horrible teacher or they hate me. I always, like Alondra said, like I always wonder what's happening. I've had students who are honor students who just aren't doing any of their work anymore. And I know that something must be going on. And so I think the number one thing is to not give up on them. I mean, there's students that are at every Zoom meeting and are really eager. And so maybe I give them a little more attention, but the ones that aren't showing up, I try to text, I call, I say, it's okay, you've missed a lot of assignments, just do this one assignment. Can we, you know, like, and then I'll have their friends check in on them, because I think even if they're not showing up in Zoom doesn't mean they don't care. And I need to remember that, and also not take it personally, think that it's because they hate me, because there's just so many other factors that we don't know that's going on right now.
Hi, and for me, similar. And the interesting thing with teaching online now is that the teaching day has kind of opened up in different ways, and it's sort of been an advantage for certain students to express themselves in different ways and different times of the day, because most of my students didn't have you know, regular internet, Chromebook before this happened. So now they do. And so I know I've had students, you know, turning in things at like midnight, and, you know, just when it was right for them. And, you know, students who needed like that little bit extra attention, you can give it in different ways online. And it seems it's I don't know, just different how you can interact with students. So that kind of helps the situation. And so I think definitely in the classroom, it can seem like you might be focusing on a few students who are really struggling or for some reason or another. But, you know, I tried to build a community in my classroom, and it's obviously not perfect, but we all the students, and actually this is anywhere, like all the students want all the students to do well. No student likes to sit in a classroom where a child is getting in trouble over and over again. So we all try to take care of each other, you know?
Pascal, if you don't mind me asking the educators, how are you guys separating the students that can do the work and are just choosing not to, and the students that are truly in situations where they can't do the work?
I don't really know. I don't know how to tell who can and cannot. I just trust my students. I say, please do this. And if you don't, you probably have a really good reason not to. And I try to make the work engaging. I try to make it meaningful. That's why I said we've been doing a lot more civics in this time. And so we're very project-based, and we're not just doing the same old. And they know I'll never, because I don't even give homework unless it's necessary, because I don't believe in homework, especially at a young level. And so I won't give them extra work during this that's meaningless. So they pretty much know they can trust me. And so I trust them in the same way that if, I procrastinate sometimes too. So there's no real excuse for that. So, if it goes on and on, we can address it. But generally, I think there's just a lot going on that I can't see everything going on. So I just have to hope and think the best for them, but always check up on them, not just leave them alone, but check up on them, like we were saying before, in a human way, and not just where's that work way.
Definitely agree. I've been trying to so I teach English, so we're having magazine writing, and then we're doing Zoom sessions with community leaders later. So I try not to do just something that's like from some website that was already made in an article that doesn't really matter. But I never feel like some kids will say, oh, I'm lazy, but I feel like there's just so much and there's so little that we can help with mental health issues, depending on whether you can get counseling, whether there's privacy in your room, that I can't, you might call yourself lazy. I don't think any of the students are being lazy. And then even when you're in Zoom and you can hear like 10 other cousins running around and you're trying to focus, that is enough, is a big success for me. But I think also realizing that some students really need the one-on-one support, and that's where those office hours that Catherine fought for, and me kind of being proactive and being like, how about 1 o'clock? Okay, 1 o'clock, here's the link. I'll see you there. I'll text you again. I'm so happy you came. So that I think that's helped a lot. And then I tell the students, like if I see a student when I did one-on-one with them really struggle, then I text or email all their teachers like, hey, maybe that's why that kid's not doing it. Do you have an office half hour that you can sit with that one kid and do that one assignment that's the most important for this week? I think that's how that kid will be successful, because they can't maybe handle all of the assignments thrown at them in Google Classroom at one time.
Let's go.
Do you guys feel like a student to a teacher relationship would have to be built on trust to give them that type of space, to give them so they can get their work done during the pandemic and any other pandemic that happens, God forbid?
Wrong mute. Hi. So sorry, I keep on pushing the wrong mute. Yeah, I definitely think that pre-pandemic, always in teaching, the relationship is the first thing that is the most important in a school and in a classroom and in my classroom. And so even though, and there's a big rhetoric in Boston and in all schools across the nation that is all about production, and production means that students, quote unquote, aren't falling behind. And we really need to unpack those ideas of falling behind, because, what are the students falling behind on? If we are just concerned about making sure they're getting through these certain standards, and we're not trying to help them express their humanity more, and for them to do that, they've got to trust me. They've got to know that I'm never going to give them work that's a waste of time. I'm giving them work that's preparing them to be the best human that they can be. That's what I hope, and that's what I try to do. And, I think it can come across as sometimes people might think, oh, that's easy or low expectations, someone might think. But I think that my students actually can perform pretty well for me, because they know, like I said, they can trust me, that I'm not going to give them busy work, fake work, or work that just will make me look like I'm a good teacher, that I got stuff done. I'm giving them work that's going to hopefully enhance their humanity.
Definitely agree about giving work that is meaningful. I think also the relationships that we built from September to March are what's pushing us from March to June. And I think that's also the case with the families. Because of different issues that have come up in different families, I've reached out to I teach 10th grade. I've reached out to the families of the 11th graders, the 12th graders, trying to get them all the information. Like Julia Mejia will put out, there's this resource, apply for this money, and I'll like text 60 different families. And that could only happen because we have that relationship of trust. And I think that the students know who cares. They wanted to be successful, but they also just want to have someone that cares about them.
Yeah. As a student, I don't know if any of the other students want to chime in on this, but I think as a student, it's important that I know that the work that I'm doing is beneficial to me, because I actually like stopped doing work just because I knew like it wasn't doing anything for me. I hate, I don't want to say hate, that's a strong word. I don't like doing work that I know is not going to go towards anything. Like, what is it leading up to? It's kind of like, okay, you just gave me this worksheet, but what am I doing it for? And if I feel like if a teacher is not able to answer that, then that's really like harmful for the students, because not only are we not learning, but we're it's kind of a waste of time almost. Like, we're in a pandemic, but we're doing work, like you're worried about us doing work that doesn't really matter. So I just want to say, like, as a student, that's really important to us. Alondra, were you gonna chime in?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Naesoj, on that. Like, if you are giving me work as a teacher that is, made with the intention of just keeping me busy, especially during a time like this. I feel like even, when you look on social media, a lot of people are like, take this time to be productive, take this time to be productive. Like, this isn't like vacation. This isn't an extended vacation. This is a global pandemic. There are people that are really suffering, maybe from the virus itself or some other, byproduct of the virus. And it's like, when you have teachers who care enough to give you really meaningful, work that distracts you in a sense, while you're also preparing yourself and still getting the tools that you need for the following year in such a difficult time, like, that means a lot to me as a student. You know what I mean? Even, for example, at the very beginning, my teacher popped up, we're learning about mass incarceration. And she had us write an essay. And at first when I saw it, I was like, oh God, but the essay was basically comparing, the effects, or not comparing, but talking about the effects of like COVID-19, but in the prisons. So that for me is really meaningful work. Like, I feel like I'm somehow, I feel like I'm a part of the conversation of what's going on. And at the same time, I'm preparing and using the skills that she's using me in preparation for my senior year.
So I know everyone is talking about meaningful work. Right now, do you guys feel like you guys are being overwhelmed by your teachers, or do you just feel like the work is just right now?
I think teachers are trying to give less work than normal due to the fact that we are not only dealing with this, but we're also dealing with our family constantly. And it could be chores or responsibilities we have within the families. So I think a little bit more work wouldn't be bad, but I think I 100% don't think they're being very overwhelming. In fact, I think they're being the opposite. I think they're being very supportive and very attent. I don't know if that's a word. And they're always there for students. I don't think they're giving work that will stress them out, but a little bit more work wouldn't be wrong.
I guess I'm kind of the opposite of Catherine right now, because although I know that my teachers care and I know that they're trying to be supportive, I've just like I think I've felt like I'm getting more work than I probably did before the pandemic. But one thing I did notice as a student is that I was kind of doing it to myself almost. Like, I wasn't pacing myself. I was saving all my work till Friday, and I was like, and I kind of looked like at myself this week and I'm like, Naesoj, you're doing this to yourself. Like, you're overwhelmed because of yourself. And I was like, yeah. And so this week I put together a schedule and everything. And I just realized like, it was like, the work was so like bunched up that I could get it done, and that my teachers were assigning it in a way where I wasn't going to be overwhelmed. I was just choosing to overwhelm myself, if that makes sense. So I guess right now I would say no, it's not overwhelming. Are we getting more work? Probably. But I think my teachers personally are making it so that you're able to get the work done in a timely fashion and so that you don't feel too stressed out.
So, Naesoj, if I'm a student with mental health issues, how do you feel like I should go about that if I'm in your shoes right now? Like if I feel the same way.
I think if like a student with mental health like issues were in the same situation as me, I think just figuring out what's best for them, because I feel like every student is looking at another student to be like, oh, maybe I should be that way. Well, I don't want to say every student, but I know that's what I do. I look at a student, I'm like, maybe I should be that way, maybe I should be doing that. But once I realized that I can go at my own pace and I can be my own student, and I stopped comparing myself to everybody else, and I realized that you're in a competition with yourself, not anybody else but yourself. I think that's when you start feeling better about the work that you're doing and the time that it's taking you to get the work done. So I think just realizing that you're in a competition with yourself and really looking to yourself to get the work done.
Okay, so I want to ask the teachers, like, how do you know when it's okay to draw the line between the work and okay, it's time to see how you're doing and I need to check up on you? Like, how do you figure out when that is?
I think that if you're always checking on them anyway, and you're building that relationship of trust, they'll tell you, and then you can make the decision. Like I have students who are essential workers and the only people working in their family right now. And when they tell me, Miss, I'm really stressed, I missed that assignment, and I know that assignment was important, but it wasn't like leading up to the major project, I'm like, forget it. Because like, I mean, you're out there risking your life every day. Is that one assignment going to be the most important? But if you've had that relationship where you're checking in on them anyway, because I find students they'll ask for an extension, but they'll never, or they'll disengage, but they'll never like ask you, is it okay? 100 billion things happen this week. Is it okay if I don't do that? They never ask me that. And sometimes I'm like, it's okay. Like, don't worry, please don't stress out about this. I don't want to be an extra stress in your life right now.
And like I said before, we have a check-in at the beginning of every one of my classes. So, the morning classes 5 times a week. So we'll always check in on a question. And then one thing I've been doing lately that I heard about from another teacher is vent and validate. So we talked about what venting means and what a vent is. And then we talked about ways to validate feelings. And so we do that, and some of the kids do it through the chat, and some of them will do it through speaking out. My kids were really building, I think, an interesting community in my class, because they do seem to be feeling like they can share with me or with the class. And I've made sure I brought in some guest speakers that have allowed them to explore ideas of mental health. Like I did have my Qigong teacher come in twice now, and he's talked about mindfulness. And even a lot of times parents sit with their kids. I always encourage families to sit during my classes. So he came in and he talked about mindfulness and all of that. I had Christian White come in, who's a community activist who talks a lot about mental health. And he spoke to the kids, and he's actually coming in for a 3rd time tomorrow to work with the kids just on whatever. Like he comes in and he speaks for about 2 minutes, and then the kids share. So we have a lot of sharing time. And Boston is a rich place for wonderful people who have been so willing to come to my class. I mean, next week I have Troy Burton coming in, and she runs a program called Black and Mental Health. And so just having those opportunities during my class time for them to fall back on and to think about it other times as well.
Pascal, if you don't mind me asking, Mr. Sylvia, you work at a Boston public school, right? As far as that goes, how do you feel like administration has made it hard for you to do your job? Because I know sometimes I talk to my teachers. I'm sorry, you don't have to answer if you feel too personal, but I know I talk to my teachers and like they have this new policy where they have to have at least two Zoom calls a week. And my teachers are like, you guys are doing the work. We check in. I don't need all these Zoom calls and I don't need all these stipulations, but they have to follow it because of administration. And it's kind of stressing them out too. So how do you feel like administration has not only stressed you out, but kind of causes you to alter the way you do your job?
I wouldn't say like my principal has done that. And definitely he's been supportive. He meets with student government. I think some of the state guidelines, because we have to offer the students 3 hours of video classes every day. And then there's been a bigger push, especially I think coming from like the Globe editorial board of collecting data on our students and our teachers. I don't know if administration or even Boston Public Schools agrees with that, but there is a bigger push of getting data. But the message from my school has just been do what works for the students. We have students who are taking classes through WhatsApp, like students who've recently come through the country and are also working 40, 50 hours a week. And WhatsApp's the only thing that's working with them. And my boss is not telling us to change that. So I think there's definitely a push from some people to look at our data, and I don't think that's helpful. And I think that we're, as a school system, we should maybe push back on what's the best for the students, the families, and the educators.
Can I speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I was looking for you. Yeah.
Oh. So, yeah, I feel like when this all happened, the first week, like that Monday that we were getting, that we were told, actually we were told on Friday that Monday would be our last day. So on Monday, there were a lot of people, because a directive, I don't know where it had come out from, it was just my school, if it was Boston, like, you got to make packets. And I told my kids, I'm like, I'm not making packets, because, you know, I usually don't learn from packets. And also, if every teacher in the school is making packets for 960 kids, it just makes no sense. But I told them, I said, okay, here, you know, I was like, here's my phone number, because I didn't, you know, nobody knew at that time what was going on. Mm-hmm. So a lot of directives come out, and I know people were like stressing, they're like, aren't you going to make your packet? And I never made a packet, because I knew in my head what my instinct was, is I needed to listen to the parents. I needed my kids to get my phone number, my email, if they didn't have it already. And so I gave them out cards with that. And then I also I passed around a notebook so they could put their personal phone numbers and their parents, just to make sure if anything had changed, because a lot of families' numbers change. And then that first week, I actually missed one of my common planning time meetings because I was at Grove Hall, you know, with the Food for the Soul, feeding families, because to me, that was more important to be done at that time. And I think it is important to have common planning time if there's some important goal at the end of that. And I think at that point, nobody really knew. And then by the second week, I was meeting with the parents. And so that's who I went to, because I wanted to know how they felt about this. And actually, I've gotten a lot of good information from parents and from students. Like, I thought, oh, we might be spending too much time on Zoom, because I was actually told at my school that because I was doing class 5 times a week and they don't even know that I'm doing it at 8 o'clock at night. But they were like, that might be too much, so don't do too much. And then I asked the parents, and they were like, actually, we don't mind you having 5 Zoom classes a week. Our child's going to be on a screen. We'd rather it be you than, you know, TikTok or the TV. So I listen to the parents, the students, my own instinct. And then, of course, I have administrators that mean well. But I think, again, there's just such a focus on production. And this is before pandemic as well, just production and stuff that doesn't really truly, we want to say it helps our students, but I would like to argue back that maybe it doesn't truly help them.
And I want to come to the students too, Catherine. How are you feeling like administration may be making it hard for your teachers, or even how do you think like administration directly is making it hard for you in school? Or do you think so at all?
Can you rephrase the question, please?
Yeah, so kind of like you go to a is that a Boston Public School?
Yes.
Yeah, so kind of like our superintendent and our mayor and stuff like that, and our like the people that kind of run the education, the Boston Public School education. Do you think that they've, or even like principals and headmasters, do you think that the stuff that they're telling your teachers or even telling us students directly is hard for you at all?
Oh, well, the Zoom requirements is definitely hard due to the fact that sometimes they might do it too early because they unfortunately can't please every single student. So that's definitely hard, especially for me, someone that has to do things in the house, that has responsibilities in her families. So that's 100% hard. I would love if it was optional, even though if you're turning your work in. Based on the principal, I think no. I think our principal especially is very flexible on these terms of ideas. He tries to be very flexible due to the fact that not every student has access to internet or to technology at all. So I think that yes, in terms of the requirements on Zoom, but no in terms of the school itself, if you understood what I.
Yeah, I understand. Alondra, do you want to?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so I was basically asking, like, how do you think administration has made it hard for your teachers, or how do you think administration has directly made it hard for you for during this pandemic?
I think in terms of administration with the teachers, you know, they, of course, they try to be transparent with us, but, you know, not to the point of getting too personal into what their relationships are like with their colleagues. But they've definitely expressed that to an extent, yeah, it's been difficult, and they've made it, our administration and our school has made it a little bit, hard in certain areas. I think now it's definitely, we have a bit more of like a flow and like a pace that we follow. I think there was a lot more pressure at the very beginning when everything was first like coming out all at once. But I think now the teachers and the admin have a little bit more of a better communication because everyone knows like what's going on. In terms of like the students and how that affects us, it was stressful at first, kind of like the same thing with the teachers. It was stressful at first. It was, a little bit overbearing at first because there was a lot coming out all at once. Some teachers were sending like 5 assignments in one day, while other teachers were not saying anything at all. They were silent for weeks and weeks, and nobody knew what was going on. So I think it was definitely a lot of pressure on us at the start because we weren't sure. And especially since, BPS hadn't like released the grading system and stuff like that from the administration or from the superintendent. So we had no idea, like, does this work count? Does this work not count? Like, am I going to get penalized for the fact that I haven't logged in a week? Stuff like that. It was a little bit of everything.
Thank you so much. Did somebody join us, or does it?
Me.
Okay.
Me.
Hi, counselor.
I'm trying to join in. Did you guys let me in?
You're in.
Finds out you didn't let me in. I'm trying to get in from my computer, so it's here. I think Naesoj deleted me.
I deleted. No, I don't have.
Your hi. I'm sorry to interrupt. Your computer profile is in there, Julia. You're in now.
Oh, I'm in. Okay, well, let me hang up. I'm like, I want to get in the conversation, and I want to be on my little, what I'm used to being on. I don't know if you guys can hear me or see me, but
yes, we can.
I've been listening in. And so I know there was some discussion around administration. There's been some discussion around kind of like what constitutes as enough check-in. Is it too much? Is it, so I've been catching bits and pieces here and there. I'm just curious whether or not you guys have talked about this whole idea of assessments. There was I recently learned in the news that that the students were going to be asked to be assessed during this time. And I'm just really thinking about, since we're talking about mental wellness, it seems to me that the priority should be on how our students are adjusting to this new norm, quote unquote, and how our educators are adjusting to just being in this remote space. And I just don't feel personally as a parent looking outside of just being a city councilor, but just as a parent, period, that we as a family haven't had the time to process what this pandemic means to us. But yet we have been working from home. My daughter has been going to school remotely, and it just feels like the expectation is that we're just going to continue to do business as usual and then just deal with it. And I'm just curious as to what you as educators, what kind of feedback, or even if you have had any opportunities to really kind of talk about the type of culture that we create for our young people that leads with, let's just spend some time and just dealing with our feelings, and just do that for the first month, you know, or two if we have to, right? I just wondering, you know, I would love to hear from the educators about that transition, and then also hear from the young people about is it too late to push for something like that? Just curious. I know I said a lot there. I just haven't been engaged in the conversation, so I'm trying to throw it all in right now. Sorry, Naesoj.
Hi, so I can speak on
Well,
oh.
Well, Suzie, we can't hear. Who's talking? Suzie, is that you?
I see your lips. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Julia, can you hear me?
I can't hear nobody.
Oh, no.
Do you know why I can't hear anybody? Can y'all hear me?
Yes,
we can
hear you.
Yes.
Yeah,
we can hear you.
We just can't hear Miss Mcglone.
Brady, I can't hear anybody.
You can't hear me?
Oh
Yes,
yeah,
we can hear you.
Okay. Well, I'll begin to answer and maybe we'll figure out the technical issues. So as far as the tests go, yeah, that was a bit of a surprise to me that they were going to do that. I mean, but I know about it now. So, you know, Counselor, you had come a few weeks ago. You were our first guest at our first parent meeting that we had. And so we've continued having those meetings every week, and they've been really beneficial just for parents to check in. So last night, the topic was those tests, because I wanted to hear what the parents thought about that. And I had a little bit of information I'd just gotten from my school, and some of the other 6th grade teachers joined us for this parent meeting, and they presented on it. And a lot of the parents were pretty concerned at first, and I think they still don't really understand the purpose and understand how it's going to go, because I had several parents. Our meetings are in 4 languages: Spanish, Cape Verdean Creole, English, and ASL. So my parents are getting this information and having to process it, and then thinking, how am I going to give this assessment to my student who is still learning English or who has an IEP? So they still had a lot of concerns, and we are going to continue that conversation at our next Wednesday meeting. And I really think that Boston as the city and Boston Public Schools really will have an easier time if they just please go to the community and ask them the questions, because also my parents had some really good ideas about summer programming too. So I appreciate you came in to listen, and I think that maybe that needs to happen more with more people who are in the power.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I just learned about the assessments that we have to give yesterday, and we're going to have the meeting tomorrow. I was hoping, because I teach ESL, we usually get excused from it, that my students wouldn't have to deal with it, but I guess that they will. I don't think it's a great decision to assess students during a pandemic. As a mom too, luckily my daughter hasn't had to do assessments like that, like a final year assessment, and I wouldn't want to have her do that. I feel like we've been assessing them in their growth. We've been giving them assignments. I don't think any type of standardized assessment is really going to be a meaningful use of their time, and could only be destructive if it's a score that the kid didn't want or has some type of effect on them.
And thank you for that. And I'm curious, and I'd like to hear from the young people, how do you all think about this whole notion you've been away from your peers, you've been away from class. I mean, you haven't been away from class because you've technically been in class, but what do you think about having to be assessed at this point in time?
I feel like it just put like a extra weight on our shoulders, just added on to everything that we're already dealing with, like the pandemic, and then the extra work. Like, God forbid someone in any of our families that have to take the test, like had the virus and we had to take a test. Like, I feel like the administration for the Boston Public Schools and any other school that has to be assessed, like, I feel like they don't look at the bigger picture, like what we go through on a day-to-day basis. Like, us down here, over here, like on Earth, really, like we really go through real life things, and just like it doesn't really make any sense sometimes what they do. So I feel like, me personally, it's just an extra weight on me and my shoulders. So
Thank you for that. Naesoj, I'm curious, and Alondra, what do you all think about that? The
Catherine,
test.
like, you can go, Catherine. I was like, Catherine, go. She said.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Catherine, there you are.
I am here. So I especially think that it just adds more stress, especially my school, because we're an immigrant school. I don't know if this test could be translated at all. I think it's not necessary, nor is going to add anything. I think it's just, as Pascal said, it's just going to add weight to our shoulders. I just don't believe that is something that we need right now. I believe right now we need emotional support, not something that's gonna bring us down and just kind of demolish that, as Ms. Haywood said. So I think that's not gonna be helpful at all. I just think that's going to add more stress to our daily life. And yeah, now that I think about it, I 100% think it's gonna add a weight to our shoulders, especially to our school, that we're an immigrant school, dealing with other things, and also the language barrier is going to be very difficult.
Thank you for that.
I would say, I feel like I have a couple opinions when it comes to these assessments. So I know all of my assessments are next week. So as far as your question, Counselor, about what we can do, I kind of think like it's too late for some schools, because like all of my assessments, like I said, are next week. And I guess my first opinion on it would be, I don't think it's fair to students that have been doing the work, because not only are we doing this work, but now we have to show you that we've been doing the work. And they say like, oh, it may not go into Aspen. And for those of you who don't know, Aspen is the grading system that Boston Public Schools use. And so I'm like, well, I feel like it doesn't matter if it goes into Aspen or not, because whether or not it destroys my grade, what is it going to do to me? Like, I've been doing this work, and I take this test and see that I haven't really learned anything and retained this information. How is that going to affect me mentally? Am I going to continue to do your work after I take this test and I fail this test, because now I feel like I'm doing your work for no reason, because I'm not retaining any of the information that I'm learning? And then another thing that I'm worried about is just like, how are you really assessing students? Because I'm like, well, I asked my teachers, are we going to take these assessments on Zoom? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, how do we know students are on multiple devices? And I hate to put it out there because I'm a student, but we cheat. Like, that's just how that goes. So I'm like, how is a teacher really supposed to know whether or not a student is taking this test with academic integrity? And I feel like it's unfair to those students that are going to take it and completely put away the electronics and not use anything and just use what they've been taught. And so I just don't think it's a smart way to basically test whether or not we're learning.
That's dope.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with everything that's been said so far. Truth be told, I didn't hear about this until right now, so I'm freaking out. I am freaking out over here. I already don't like exams as it is. I'm not gonna say I'm terrible at them, but sometimes I'm terrible at them. I have to admit, I don't know how I've retained even a little bit so far. So I'd be surprised if I retained anything in that assessment. I just think it's a complete waste of time. I think it's it's kind of ties back to something that I mentioned earlier, like that rush of productivity and wanting to use a global pandemic as a way to get ourselves ahead in different areas. Like, life is on pause, and I think that we need to be okay with that. And stuff like this just continues to show the the mess that sometimes is our education system and multiple other departments, you know, varied throughout our governments, throughout our communities. And I just think it's really dysfunctional. And I'm really worried. I'm really worried about how, you know, I look at, I don't know if the younger students are going to do it or not, but I look at my little siblings who the type of work that they've gotten so far from their schools and their attention has been absolutely minimal. But yet my sibling who lives here in my mom's house, she's gotten a lot of attention, but she still has a lot of anxiety with her work, and us homeschooling her has been really difficult. So I kind of think about like, how are they going to be able to handle that? And then I look at myself, who I get distracted really easily. And I know that I have not retained anything at all. I'm going to fail. That's it. Like, I already know I'm going to fail. And, you know, I'm not even trying to be negative, but can you guys hear me? Did I leave? Did I go out?
Yeah,
We can hear you.
You're good. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I'm
And I feel like I'm
concerned
doing
about.
I'm
No,
gonna.
can I? Oh,
I know I'm gonna be leaving again. Sorry, because they just called me back. I missed my turn because I'm cheating on them, and I'm live, and everybody knows that I'm doing double dipping here. But can you, Gayl, can you, because I gotta go. Can you follow up on the whole idea of the mental wellness? No one really cared about our kids and how we were feeling and how our families were feeling. Can you talk about that? Because I'm gonna go. I'll be back again.
yeah. So thank you, Julia. So I was gonna say that I'm not sure what their thinking is, or you know what's behind it and what outcome they're expecting to get. Because one of the things is that you already have a group of young people, and even the teachers, right? So a group of people who are trying to manage their own mental wellness, their stress level, and now you're adding something on top of that with the word assessment. Just hearing it alone increases someone's anxiety level just by hearing the word, and then their stress level gets increased at the same time. So I'm not sure what the logic is or the thinking around it is. And just to add to that, in terms of when you are when you are in the midst of a stressful situation that's happening, how do you go about thinking of adding something else that's going to increase the person's stress level? So what makes them think or believe that these young people are going to do good on these assessments, even if you know you have the top students out there? What makes you think that they're going to be able to do well on these assessments when they have so many other external factors that are impacting their who they are and what they are doing and how they're living, right? And in addition to that, so I did have a question too as well, in terms, and I'm asking this question because I hear my son say it too as well. And this goes to the teachers and the young people. How much new learning did you feel like you have gotten, right? And this is to the young people. And then the question to the teachers are, even though you are giving new material, how much do you think that the young people or these children are gaining this new information or this new knowledge? So when you add that to the ingredients of things, giving an assessment is not going to be as useful and helpful to either the teachers who are trying to figure out what these assessments are going to look like, and also, so that's adding stress to the teachers, and you know how it's going to be helpful to these young people who feel like, you know, I can't even retain any new information that I'm getting now, much less to be assessed on something that I'm not even retaining. I hear my son say, I haven't learned anything, Mom, new. I really haven't. I show up for my classes and that's about it. But I haven't gained anything new. So that's causing even more stress for him as a rising senior, in terms of, I'm getting ready to go on to the next level transition in my life. And here it is that I'm in this space of, what have I learned? So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think Dr. Gayl, I would have to say, I feel like, I don't want to say I haven't learned, but I haven't retained. Like I had a math class last week and I felt like I was like all on top of my game. And then this week she gives us a do now with the work we learned last week. And I'm like, we learned this. I was like, I don't remember. And so I feel like, yes, I may be learning like maybe like the bare minimum, but I don't think I'm retaining enough of the information that they're teaching me, especially because I get worried about how are we going to transition into next year? Is it going to be the educator's job to kind of catch up or like kind of fill in what we didn't get during this remote learning? I feel like that not only does that put a lot on the teacher, but that puts a lot on students, because now we have to learn all this over again. We're kind of like that's taken away from next year, the next year's academic year. And then another thing I think about is how can schools do better at promoting learning instead of getting a grade? Because I feel like they're two different things. Because I know for me, I'm very like, I'm eager to learn, but I'm more eager to get a good grade. So as long as I see an A, I don't care if I retain the information. And I think that's a bad mentality to have. And I think we need to stop letting students say and think like, as long as I get an A, it doesn't matter whether or not I learned this lesson or not.
I agree with
Naesoj. It's okay, Naesoj, yeah.
I'm so sorry. I'm really pronunciation. I 100% agree, especially with the English barrier. It's harder to retain things. And right now we have a lot in our plate. We're constantly interacting with our families. We are having responsibilities within our home. Not only that, but being aware with what's happening in the world right now. It's super hard. And on top of that, classes. So it's super hard to retain information. And I'll say, I'm not going to say that I'm not learning at all, as Naesoj said. But I am 100% going to say that remotely learning is not the same as face-to-face. And I am not learning as I should be learning. And for that reason, I just don't think you are at your best point to take this test. And I don't think they are really going to be breaking you at your right mentality. I just don't think we are not capable of doing it, but we are in our right mindset of, and I just don't think it's going to be helpful at all. So the learning right now is not as we should be learning. And just due to that cost, I don't think it's worth the shot of that test. I just think it's a waste of time.
I teach 10th grade English, and we went into quarantine about a week before the English MCAS that determines whether a student will get a diploma. And one of the saddest things over the next month of my weekly check-ins was students all wanted to know, are we gonna have to take the MCAS? And that they had been drilled that that was the priority. And I was like, I don't care, like you're alive. I'm so thankful for that. So I think that I was pretty happy. Of course, I didn't think the MCAS would happen. I'm not so happy if it's going to happen again for these students next year as a high school requirement. But I think that we don't need it for an assessment that's going to give any type of stress. I think we are assessing. We are giving them work and trying to make it meaningful, hopefully, and knowing that they're not going to retain as much, and it's not going to be as good, of course, as being in person. But some type of standardized assessment from a website isn't going to be that helpful in any type of instruction.
Yeah, I wanted to add on what Mr. Silva said, because it should be pointed out that these tests are standardized tests that the kids are getting. My students are supposed to get the first two next Thursday, and they're not tests made by the teacher. And my kids have been doing stuff above, I'm just like the students here, above and beyond, like just living life in this moment of history is just amazing. And how students have reflected on this, have made art about this, have, created poetry about this, have written essays. That's amazing. And that's not going to be on that standardized test. And I would even venture to say, most standardized tests are flawed, are biased. The MCAS didn't happen this year. Everybody's still alive. I personally hope that the MCAS doesn't happen next year any longer. It costs us $30 million. I mean, let's think about what we could do with that money. And that's even before you're paying for people to grade the test. So I think, and this might be another conversation later, and because it's not as much, well, it is about mental health, because taking the MCAS, which a lot of my students who are newcomers to the country have to do right when they get there, to get here to our school, that is not good for their mental health, to be taking this test. I imagine myself taking a test in Portuguese or Cape Verdean Creole, and I would be below the kindergarten level if I took a math or English test in that. And so I think at some point we need to look behind, like, who's really interested in having these tests and why? Because is this about, do the communities want this? Do the students want this? And I think if we really dig deep to figure out who wants or feels like the students need these tests, then we could maybe figure out something better to do than these tests. And I really hope that I'm so interested in what the young people are saying in this conversation today. I hope that these voices are listened to, because I think that some people might just say, no, you've got to push kids. You've got to, really push them, you've got to have high expectations. But those would be people that don't understand what our students are really capable of. And most of my students speak 2, some of them 3 languages, 4 languages, some of them. They know multiple cultures. And so I think that we need to really look at the assets our students are building upon right now. It's amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Ms. Mcglone, because that's kind of the next topic that I wanted to go into about my minority students is a big thing. And I don't really like the word minority, so I'm gonna kind of change the language a little bit. But students that are in underrepresented communities or lower class communities, the biggest thing I think about is how are they being looked at when they don't do as well on these kind of standardized tests. I think about, I go to an exam school, but someone at a non-exam school, how are they comparing us and saying, okay, this person at the exam school did better? Because I feel like that's not fair, because obviously I probably had access to more resources or access to more like I don't know, to like I don't want to say better, but like a higher class teacher or whatever they would like to say, like up on like their level. How can you compare me to another student that doesn't have the same exact resources as me? How could you compare me to a student that's at a private school with tutors and prep classes, and they devote their time to teaching these students how to take the test, not even what's on the test, but how do you, okay, let's time yourself, how are you getting through all these questions? So I think, like, I just want to kind of ask you guys, like, how do you think there's a disparity in the way they measure these tests and the way they compare students that are in lower class communities rather than higher class communities?
Do you mean the test that they're going to give in the next couple of weeks?
No, not the formative assessment, just like standardized tests in general.
Okay, because I don't actually know what they're giving you. Oh, so, which maybe isn't a great thing. I think that just thinking in the pandemic as well, that we need to think about the importance of standardized tests. We always did, but I think especially now when there's so many different layers of equity, of people losing, of grief, mental health, students who haven't left their apartments in weeks because their family's afraid of them going outside, food insecurity, people losing their jobs. Like there's the playing field is so messed up right now. And I think that standardized tests aren't going to measure much except what the issues of equity are.
Yeah, I agree completely with what all has been said here. And I would just again promote that we really look into why are people so attached to these tests? And I know they cost a lot of money. And I think we really need to pack that in. As far as the test bias, that's real. I actually worked on making the MCAS for several years. I made the 8th grade MCAS and I made the 5th grade ELA MCAS. So I know how it's made, and I know the people from Measured Progress who were originally making them way before it became, requirement for this and that. They said this was not what this test was made for. Because I took tests when I was a little girl that were standardized, but they were to just in a general way to see how things were going in a school. Now tests are used for punishment, and they end up punishing those students, like just the students I'm hearing right now that feel stressed and don't feel confident about what they've learned or what they know. I mean, I'm talking to students that seem pretty brilliant, that know a couple of languages. So I don't like it that the tests and the testing situations make students feel that way, but I know they do. So I think this is a really serious thing that I do hope that parents and students get listened to on more, because I know all day there will be people in my school, people in BPS saying, oh, we're doing this because we want to, you know, help the kids, because we want to know where they are and how we can help them. No, it's not for equity. And I mean, anyone who knows me knows that this is my opinion. So I'm not talking out of school or anything. And I'd also recommend a book. I actually tagged the author when I was putting this on Facebook, Jose Vilson, who is a teacher in New York City. And he wrote a book called This Is Not a Test. And it's not the book you're expecting. And he actually wrote it several years ago, but it's such a good book on this idea of testing. And I think the parents have never been, and the community have never really been in charge of testing and why we have this testing. And like I said, $30 million, why? So I think I would love for there to be more community discussions about why that's happening.
Yeah, I want to hear from the young people on this call. Catherine, Alondra, Pascal, how are you feeling about like, I don't want to say we're in minority schools, but we're in Boston Public Schools, and obviously we know we're in underrepresented communities. So how do you feel we're kind of like at a disadvantage when it comes to standardized tests?
Well, I have, I'm always gonna say this, but as coming from an immigrant school, you just feel like, for example, as a competition to this test, like SAT, you just feel like you're not ever gonna get up to that level. You feel like you sometimes you even feel like you're not good enough. For example, in my school, they don't provide the AP English just because they believe we don't have the English necessary to take it. So I feel like when it comes to this test, a lot of minorities, let's say a lot of immigrants, I'm just gonna say immigrants, and a lot of people that are not being as represented as others, I just feel like they don't feel like they're up to it, and sometimes they might just back off. And I think we should break that. Actually, I think that it's not necessary, and it does not build up to no one. Like, it really benefits no one, because the language barrier is a real thing. It's not true that if you give me an English assignment and a Spanish assignment, I am 100% gonna do better in the Spanish assignment. So you're not really qualifying your abilities, you're actually qualifying your English level. So I think those tests aren't helpful at all. And I think we should actually break that mentality that tests are the thing that proves that you're smarter, when it actually breaks you and makes you feel, and it actually makes you feel like a minority. So we should stop that. And that's what I think. Respect.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Alondra, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with everything that Catherine just said. You know, I'm listening to her, and I started thinking of different stories that I've heard of people who came to this country and, you know, were kept back because of their English level, but yet in every other skill set, whether it was mathematics or, you know, whatever it was, they maybe even excelled above their class, but yet they were penalized because of their English level. Mm-hmm. So when I think about stuff like standardized testing and I think about the disadvantage is real. And as much as people on the outside looking in want to say that it's not because it benefits them to stay blind, they can go ahead and do that. But at the end of the day, it's as real as my walls. Like, it's real. And I think it's really sad. And I hope, if there's one thing that I really hope that we get out of this pandemic, is the fact that a lot of our systems and our institutions and our organizations do not function properly. They're outdated. They are incredibly biased. And, you know, I definitely think that, can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Making sure, because someone froze on my end. But I think that I really want them to change the way that they think about intelligence and ability, what those things mean, you know, how do we measure that? And I don't think that there's one way to define that, or what it means to be intelligent, or what it means to have a certain skill set. And I think that we really got to start catering to the students. And I think that that comes with completely breaking apart the system that we have and creating a new one. You know, I know that teachers do their absolute best, and I honor my teachers, every single one of them, because it's hard. It's not easy, you know, to implement, for example, hands-on approaches and, you know, approaches that are equal to the needs of the students while working under a system that honestly discourages that and doesn't promote that. You know, just because you have a boss that promotes it doesn't mean that the administration that you work under and the laws that you work under really encourage for you to have these students get to the level that they need to get at. And in all reality, I think that there's multiple barriers that do not allow for students in very difficult situations to progress to their highest extent, whether that is because they're an immigrant, whether that is because they were, you know, born into poverty, whether it is because that student is the only breadwinner in their home, exposed to violence in the streets, whatever the case may be. And we stigmatize these kids, and then they get lost in the system, and then we don't know what happened, and then we blame it on them. But I think that all of these different things, including things like standardized tests that seem so small, actually have a much bigger impact on those things than we think that they do.
Alondra made an excellent point, and I say that because, and I'm sure the teachers know this, right? In regards to multiple intelligences, and that we all learn so much differently. And I'm speaking from a perspective, I teach college students, and I find that when I am preparing my lesson for my students, I have to think of all those students in the classroom. And it's not an easy job at all, right? But I have to think of all those students in terms of how am I going to present this material so that they each get it from their way of learning, right? Some are visual, some are tactile, some are auditory, some needs to touch, some needs to go out and feel, and some are sense. So people learn in so many different ways. And I think sometimes that's what, you know, the system forgets, is that we have a group of people we have human beings who are complex, and because of the complexities, they learn so much differently. So it's important to teach from the perspective of those differences. And when you talk about culturally responsive teaching, if you're not doing that kind of teaching, then it takes away from who this child is, who this young person is, and really how they learn. Because again, even some young people, they can think about things from a particular perspective, but they may not necessarily need to do a written assessment for you to prove that they can do it well. They may need to just speak it and say, hey, listen, this is how I learn. And as we know, especially in communities of color, oral presentations tend to work better with that population than having any kind of written kinds of stuff, because culture has proved that that's the way in which we receive information, and that's the way in which we give out information. So again, when we're thinking about learning, we have to think of it from the perspective of the multiple intelligences, and there's not just one kind of intelligence that's out there. So thank you for bringing that to the forefront, Alondra.
Yeah, I asked Naesoj for permission to speak, and she authorized me to jump in again. So I am just so curious. Again, sorry for popping in and out. I am curious, and I want to ask Pascal this question first, because in many ways, he's the one who inspired us coming together. If you could think about what would be your ideal educational experience remotely that centers your social and emotional well-being first, what would that experience need to look like for you? Where are you, Pascal? There you are.
Honestly,
yeah.
For me, it would just have to be like just that handful of support. Like I'm a hands-on type of person when doing work, but like remotely, it's been like really helpful for all the teachers that give me all the overwhelming work. It doesn't matter if we have like a good relationship, like we haven't talked in a long time, whether they checked on me. It's just been whether like whether or not if they sent that work and then still asked me if I need any help, or do I get anything, or do I have any questions. It was just them being genuine when they sent the work. It wasn't them just sending it just so I can be busy while being in the pandemic or anything like that. It's just for that to happen right now, for me to be satisfied with anything right now, it'd be just that support from any teacher from my school, anyone there that would want to see me do more, or who want me to do anything. So just support from me personally. I just need a lot of support.
Okay, thank you for that. All right, Naesoj, Alondra, Catherine, would love to know if I'm the fairy godmother, y'all, and I came down here with a little wand and said, we're gonna make this remote learning whatever you want. What would that look like?
For me, I think I want to say I'm content. I don't know if I'm happy, but I'm content with the remote learning that I'm getting now. So I just think work that's spread out. I think I love I don't like when my teachers post everything for the week. My peers really like that, so they usually do that. But I think it's so much better when they post like this half of the work and then this half of the work. So I think that's kind of like my dream remote learning experience, like everything spread out and more promotion of like mental health and support and just like coming together, like community in general. Yeah.
Alondra?
I gotta agree with Pascal. Definitely just support. But like Naesoj, I think I'm kind of content with how things are going. I like the way that they separate the work, but I definitely miss the old support of my teachers. I just try not to ask too much of them because I know that they're all going through their own things too. So I don't push it. But if they could all be like on my back the way that they used to be, or I could like, I don't know, go to their classroom like I used to, which, you know, is not going to happen. I guess there's office hours for that. But if that support was possible, I think that would be like my dream remote learning experience.
Catherine, thank you. Thank you for that.
Well, for me, the way my teachers are doing it is that they give you the work and you do it throughout the week, however you want it. But the dream will be if they still do it like that, but maybe they have a calendar, just giving you advice of what you could do every day, whether it's just 2 questions, but just having that teacher instruction there, that will encourage students to follow it. As Pascal, Alondra, and even Naesoj, I hope I get it right, have said, having that support there constantly, and having that teacher in your back there reminding you of doing your work, and also asking, how's your day, will be really helpful. And just having a little fun activity with your teachers to still keep that bond of teacher and students, but not only that educational bond, but that relationship. So building trust, because that's how students will at the future come to you. So have like that fun activities to do with the teachers, so you could even clear your mind. So just to wrap everything, organization, with that teacher instructions, that support, having that teacher in your back there telling you, how are you, and you're missing this, but hey, we're here for you. And that teacher engagement with the students and that fun activities, I feel like that will be a dream come true if you can make that happen. Very
I'm gonna work on that. I'm gonna go to Suzie, and then Nicole. Would love to hear what your thoughts would be for the ideal remote learning.
Well, I just wrote down what Catherine said and what some of the others said. So thank you. That's really helpful to me because I love getting that kind of feedback. And my ideal, like I like working with the students in real time. That's why I like to do Zoom every day with them, and we do breakout groups and stuff. So I think if I can build up my technology a little bit better, and also if my students can, if it has to be remote learning, If we can make sure that their internet is working and that they're getting their Chromebooks, which most of them have now, but they're still, like I've got a student who has to share with his brother, so he has to miss my 11 o'clock class because his brother in 4th grade is using the Chromebook. So just anything technical would be fixed. And then
Wait, they only get one Chromebook per family, that each student doesn't get one?
right now, that's the case of that student, yes.
Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Especially when you think like next Thursday, he and his brother have 2 tests, a math and an ELA standardized tests that they'll both be doing. But yes. So, and he was actually coming to my class on his phone, but then he broke his phone. So,
Okay.
but that's, yeah, so technology to be fixed.
Thank you for that. Nicole?
I think definitely the technology issues. We have students whose hotspots are reach the max really quickly. If you're doing Zoom calls, with their Comcast Essentials free time is coming up, and wondering who's going to pay for that. Most of my students have Chromebooks. I think also being able to get physical materials to our students, like books, especially with English language learners, but lots of other students, it's easier to read an actual book than on a Chromebook, read some ebook. And I think the biggest concern for me is the food insecurity of students and all the different issues of unemployment that are also impacting families. It's hard sometimes, of course, to prioritize school if there's all this other stress going on at the home.
Yeah, and I know we're running out of time, and Naesoj is going to do a little bit of closing, but I will say, our office has a family relief fund that we created. I know you've been promoting. Let us know how we can be of support, especially around food insecurity. That's something that is deeply important to me. So send me a separate email, Nicole, so we can talk about that. And thank you. Naesoj, let you take us home, and so I just say thank you to everybody. Thank you.
So yeah, I just want to thank you guys so much for coming. This has been such a productive and immense conversation, and just so many ideas were brought to the table. And I love that Pascal inspired this, because I could just see the engagement between teachers and young people. And I know the young people definitely took a lot away from the 2 educators that we have here. And I know the educators definitely took a lot away from the students that we have here. So I just want to thank you guys for being here. And I also want to make sure that we do what we do every week. So we kind of go around and everybody just give kind of one piece of advice to our audience. So one piece of advice you have during this quarantine, whether that be with remote learning or just life in general. And we could start with Mr. Sylvia. Just that we have here. So I just want to.
That was me just looking at the Facebook. Sorry, I'm gonna put myself on mute.
One piece of advice I guess I would give everyone is to just put the person first and the work second. Whether you're a parent and some teachers calling, stressing you out, maybe just know that you taking care of your kid is more important. If you're an educator, obviously know the child and the family matter more, and just dealing with other people, that everyone's going through a lot and you might not know what it is.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mcglone.
Yes, I would agree with all of that. And I would also say, connected to that, please put the families, the students, and the community at the center of these conversations. They are brilliant. They've got good ideas because they're actually there doing the work. So if we honestly listen to them and we get their ideas, we will make the quote unquote progress we want to make, and it will be a lot more satisfying.
Thank you so much, Alondra.
Take care of you and take care of yours. So if that looks like I need to put off certain things to take care of me or to take care of mine, then do that. If that means, I'm gonna just sit outside on my porch and not do anything for like an hour, do that. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, we're going through a global pandemic. And you gotta do what you gotta do to take care of yourself. So pretty much in agreement with what the educator said.
Thank you so much, Catherine.
Definitely take care of yourself and don't be afraid of asking for help. Always put yourself out there and look out for yourself and for your family. So no matter what your legal status is, don't be afraid of seeking out for yourself and asking for help.
Yes, that is so important. Thank you so much, Pascal.
I just want to say thank you for joining, and just keep pushing and keep working.
Thank you, Dr. Gayl.
Just want to say, one day at a time, be intentional about your day. Start your day with, looking at how you're taking care of yourself. And then at the end of the day, think about what you're not going to take into the next, not what you're not going to take into tomorrow. Right? So one day at a time, be intentional for each day and only do what's within the circle of your control.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gayl. Counselor?
Yes. I'm trying to learn how to screenshot the screenshot so I can take a picture of all of y'all. Yeah, no, I think everyone already said what I would say. The only thing that I would add to that is we cannot ever forget that we're not as hopeless or as helpless as we've been led to believe. And that every day we need to remind ourselves that we're a resilient community. And we got this. There's nothing that we can't overcome. And when we stay grounded in goodness, we will. So yeah, keep it on.
Thank you so much, Counselor. And thank you guys all again for being here. Lastly, I just want to announce our new well, not new, but you guys been hearing this for about 2 weeks now. Our office's new campaign, Continue to Talk, which is meaning continue to talk on the phone, but continue to use your voices to stand up for what you believe in and continue to be the change you want to see in our cities. So I want to say, if you are a young person ages 14 to 24 and want $50 towards your phone bill, please comment your name and email or number right now in the chat box, right here in the chat box. Also, the young people on our call too, please make sure to put your name and your email in the comment section so you can get $50 towards your phone bill. Educators, please tell your students about it. It will be going on. You don't have to do much. And yeah, like always, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you next week where we're going to be honoring first generation high school students. Yay.
Yay.
Yes.
Thank you guys again.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.